Hi, and welcome back to Ghosties. I'm Macy.
And I'm Natalie. And for the very first time, we have our first special guest.
I'm Kayla. Hey.
The one and only Kayla. We have talked about her several times if you've been watching our other episodes. She's our sister. She is the one that never gets scared while Natalie and I are cowering in a corner.
Mm-hmm.
But we're super excited to have her on here. She has been kind of a part of this since we started planning. She's been our biggest supporter. So we're super excited, and we hope y'all are as excited as we are.
Woohoo!
I'm keeping that.
Yeah, so we only have 2 mics because this is a 2-man operation. So we're going to have to pass it to Kayla. So be patient.
Yes, be patient with us.
Please. This is a very low budget film.
It'll still be fun. So this episode is special for 2 reasons, actually, because we took a field trip. We went to Galveston, Texas. We're super excited. It's one of the most haunted cities in Texas, maybe even the United States.
I think it is
know.
the most haunted.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Care to weigh in?
I agree. It is very haunted.
We had some fun around the Strand, did some things as a family, and we also took a tour, actually, a haunted tour of some of the houses in Galveston. It was a blast. Our tour guide was named Noelle. I wrote that down because she was top notch.
Oh, she was so cool. And I felt so sad. Thank you for that wonderful insight.
Yeah.
No, she was so cool. And I felt like we were all like into it and like taking notes. And then everybody else was just kind of like
hanging back.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were like chasing her down at some points, like running down through the crowd. At one point, I got left behind and there was a group and they were like, yeah, let these guys go. Like, let them go.
We were serious business. I didn't want to miss a single thing she said. She had so much good insight.
She did.
But we definitely recommend y'all taking a trip down to Galveston if you ever have the chance. Super fun. The island is super fun. Take a tour.
Make sure you make it down to the candy store.
That was Kayla's favorite part.
Yeah. It is, but it's a good part.
There's also a place that has really good caramel apples.
Oh, yeah, that was fun. So while we were into the ghosts, Kayla was into the food, but it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. So just a warning, this episode is going to be a little morbid. There's lots of death, and we got to talk about it. And I'm going to get sort of detailed, so buckle up. Today, our tea is called yerba mate.
Let's pour the tea. So the tea, it's yellow and tastes yellow.
I like it.
Kayla?
Personally.
I'm not against it, but it does taste yellow.
The color yellow, that's what this tea tastes like. All right.
Haters. I
Galveston.
Like it. For those of you who don't know, Galveston is an island off the coast of Texas in the Gulf of Mexico and is a pretty big summer destination for Texans. It has a very interesting and tumultuous history, really. It was inhabited first by a group of Native Americans called the Karankawa. I think I'm saying that right. And around 1528, Spanish explorer Cabeza de Vaca is said to have been the first European to set foot on the Texas soil when he and his crew crash landed on Galveston Island, and they called it the Isle of Doom.
That's fitting.
Bum, bum, bum.
I mean, back then it probably was fitting. It was eventually named Galveston in 1785 after Spanish colonial governor Bernardo de Galvez, who never actually even set foot on the island. Pirate king Jean Lafitte once called it home after he built his own compound on the island in 1817. After he was run off by the U.S. government, the city of Galveston was slowly built up and became the capital of Texas for a short period of time. And it was one of the busiest ports in the country for imports, exports, and for immigration. Only second to Ellis Island. Which is interesting. I did not know.
I would have never guessed that.
Yeah. It was referred to as the Wall Street of the South, having the first post office in Texas and the first place in Texas to have gas lighting. By 1885, it was the largest and richest city in Texas, and it was booming and seemed to have the brightest future ahead. Then it became the location of the deadliest natural disaster recorded on U.S. soil, which could be the source of many of the eerie hauntings witnessed by residents even today.
You don't say.
It was pretty brutal. On September 8th, 1900, Galveston was hit by a Category 4 hurricane that shot from the Gulf and took with it many lives and half of the built environment on the island. The winds were recorded as high as 145 miles per hour until the instruments making those calculations were blown away by sheer force. Our tour guide told us that there was a grand piano that flew from one house during the storm and ended up 5 blocks away from its original position.
Insane.
So that's how wild the storm was. The storm surge is estimated to have been as high as 15 feet tall. The highest point on the island was Broadway Street at, I believe it was 8 feet above sea level. and it was completely underwater at one point. There were many people who ran to Broadway to avoid the flooding, but because of such insurmountable levels of water, it was to no avail, really, sadly. There weren't any warning systems in place to prepare the people of Galveston for a storm so devastating, and the population on the island went from somewhere around 37,000 to under 30,000 overnight.
Oh my gosh.
There were some people who say that there could have been as many as 12,000 people who lost their lives as a result of the storm. 7,000 buildings and homes were wiped clear from their foundations and spread debris all across the city. Once the storm had passed and the flooding had subsided, the residents of Galveston realized that they needed to act fast with all the devastation. It was Texas in early September, so super hot, and they needed to get the bodies of all the deceased out of the elements before they ended up with an even worse conditions than they had already survived. They formed a task force to locate and transport all of the deceased so that they could round them up into a few of the buildings still standing near the Strand for identification and burial purposes. Though I read some of the bodies were just buried where they were found because there were just too many people.
I can't even imagine not knowing where your person is.
And I'm sure there was a lot of that.
Just gone.
And some of them get swept out to sea anyway.
Oh, it's so sad.
So, like, some people still don't, well, I guess they're all dead now, but, like, don't know, like, if they died in that storm or, like, what happened to them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them were just assumed dead. This job was so horrendous, the rounding up of the bodies, and devastating and, frankly, nauseating because, again, hot September, deceased people, just probably not a good time, that there were at least 2 men, and probably more, who chose to be taken to the market square and executed rather than go out and gather the bodies. 700 or so of the unclaimed bodies were taken 20 miles out to sea for burial, but that just created more problems when about 3 to 4 days later, the tide brought them back in a greater state of decomposition than they were in before.
Ugh.
This led the townspeople to create mass graves throughout the city, where they burned the deceased with the many pieces of wood and debris from the destroyed buildings. There were reports as far as Houston, which is about 50 miles away, of people claiming to smell the burnings in Galveston. Though, as you can probably guess, the flames did not get hot enough to completely get rid of the deceased, and there are still locations on the island that have been found to contain bodies of those lives claimed by the storm. Just big mass graves. The bodies were scattered throughout the city on the beach, and at least 3 very large mass graves that have been confirmed. Under the Strand and Market Square is one of them. Under the Seawall Walmart, which some say is also where the old orphanage was. And on the other side of Broadway in what was called Millionaires Road, but is now referred to as the Boneyard.
That is so eerie. People are literally just walking around. If you've ever been to Galveston, like getting their picture painted or playing the little, chess.
A bunch of dead people underneath.
That makes me so, I don't even know how to describe
sad.
it. Yeah, sad, but like at the same time, just like, ugh.
Freaked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty spooky. The Boneyard actually was the most interesting location to me. Although Walmart, like you said, checks out. Because there are so many just lavish mansions and beautiful homes there. And some of them even still today survive the storm. And there's just thousands of bodies buried under. That just...
I can't even fathom it. Like, I know that there are tons of places, even the school we went to, that said oh, this was a Native American burial ground.
That's everybody's elementary school.
Yeah. But it's just knowing that is facts. That is an actual thing that really happened is so
unsettling.
Yeah.
Unsettling.
Yeah. Verb, any comments?
Verb, that's a good one. And not just bodies buried, it's bodies of people who died a very tragic death. Just horrible, sudden tragedy. And that's, a hotspot for paranormal activity, really.
Oh, yeah.
It's definitely people who had unfinished business, on Earth, because it was so, unexpected, last minute.
It was sudden. They weren't 90 years old. It was kids. It was teenagers.
People
it was
of all ages.
20-somethings. It was everyone.
Our tour guide, I took note of this. I was taking note of everything. She actually was talking about what makes a ghost. And she said, the paranormal researchers tell us that ghosts are formed in 4 ways. Sudden death, demonic possessions, habitual, they just don't leave. They just don't want to leave. Or unfinished business. When thousands of souls died in the Great Hurricane on September 8th of 1900, the massive loss seems to have triggered many of the most well-known incidents of paranormal activity. It's further speculated that ghosts like to live near water. Who knew?
Not me.
I mean, I would too, I guess. Death, I want beachfront property.
I guess so. That's insane. But I've already said, like, I have such a fear of missing out that, like, if I die suddenly, I will be a ghost.
That's
just because I don't want to miss
A
out.
friendly one, hopefully.
No.
Yeah.
I will haunt. I will
Who are you
haunt
going to haunt? Not me.
anyone
please.
that has ever crossed me.
Don't
And
cross
that's a
Natalie.
promise.
After all of the destruction, the people of Galveston took to work to prevent this kind of disaster from ever happening again, or at least try to. It took them about 7 years, but they built a seawall, which was originally 17 feet high and raised much of the island several feet. The homes and buildings that made it through the storm now have diamond plaques indicating that they're just this cool piece of history on them.
And that was so cool to, like, walk around and look at and seeing all the houses. That's the first thing I was like, ooh, do they have a plaque? And, like, just, I don't know, something about seeing the houses that were there so long ago and, you know, they saw so much. It's just like, I don't know. What does that house know?
People could have died in that house.
Literally
People did
in the
die
house.
in that house. Probably most of them.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
And people live there. People still live there today. It's like,
I don't think I could do it.
Just like nothing happened. Just live there.
No, I think they acknowledge that it happened. That's why they want the house.
But they still just go about their normal lives like, oh, this is not a haunted house. People weren't dead in here. Like, that's just...
I mean, you'd have to. You can't live every second of your life in a nice house like, somebody died here.
I would.
Why else would you buy it?
Because they're beautiful. They are beautiful
Very,
houses.
very beautiful. We'll have those pictures on our Instagram.
Normal people wouldn't want to live in a house where people died, though.
I don't know if it's nice enough. I would.
I would not.
Not me.
All
You're
of,
on your own.
That's fine. All of this shifted things for Galveston. They went from being the commerce capital to the entertainment capital, really. And they were already kind of that before the storm, but this really picked things up. Changed things for them, really. It became a hub for nightlife, gambling, and prostitution. It was referred to as the playground of the South, Pleasure Island, and even the original Sin City. A very famous and haunted nightclub on a pier called the Balinese Room hosted some of the biggest names of the era, but was unfortunately destroyed during another big storm, Hurricane Ike, in 2008.
I was literally going to say, why didn't we go?
I was going to, too. Like, we need to go.
But then you said it was destroyed.
Yeah,
So
it's long gone for a while. It was one of the popular illegal casinos that was a big part of the mob scene in Galveston back in the day. And there was an entire red light district, actually, on the island. I think y'all knew this. They have tours for that. We didn't get to take it.
no, but we will. So
we definitely
interesting.
will.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. But speaking of Hurricane Ike, the winds accompanying that storm were so strong that some of the oak trees planted after the 1900 storm were completely uprooted. And y'all might remember this from the tour. It scattered remains from the 1900 storm. Like the tree roots took bones with it and scattered remains all across the island. So people were waking up with just bodies, bones in their yard, and calling the Galveston PD. And eventually they had to send out a PSA because they were already trying to help people who were struggling from the storm and the destruction. And they didn't have enough time and resources to deal with the bodies. So they were just like, just throw them away. We'll pick them up and take them to the dump,
Which
basically.
is insane.
Just desecrate the remains of the people that are haunting the island already.
Those people are 100% haunted now.
Oh,
Yeah, the whole island.
you
Yeah.
throw my bones away? I'm coming for you.
And that's a promise.
Galveston is so haunted with bodies under most main structures in the town that it's literally referred to as some by a cemetery with a beach attached.
Oh my God.
Yeah. True. As I mentioned before, the pirate king Jean Lafitte was an early resident of the island. He built the first actual city on the island. It was his own little compound with hundreds of pirates and outcasts and any entertainment that they brought with them, like prostitutes and other things.
When you say pirate, like
Pirate.
arg,
I mean, I don't know if he said arg, but
actual,
like he sailed the seas and
stealing stuff.
stole things and burned other people's ships. He built his own home that he called Maison Rouge, which is Red House. If you don't know anything about
so creative.
it really is. If you don't know anything about Jean Lafitte, really though, you should look him up. He's really interesting dude.
I think we did a tour like in like 2009 or something like that, talking about him because I knew
Probably.
something about him for some reason.
He was supposedly a tall, very attractive, and well-spoken man, but he was also known as the terror of the Gulf of Mexico. He was involved in illegal slave trades and smuggling, and at one point, the governor of Louisiana, this is hilarious, put a bounty on Lafitte for $500, and he countered by putting a bounty on the governors. the governor's head for $5,000. He eventually actually assisted Andrew Jackson and the U.S. in the Battle of New Orleans in 1815 against the British. So
oh my God.
they kind of made amends. He settled in Galveston in 1817 with all of his outlaw followers and continued to do what pirates do. It
Me
said
and the girls.
It said that some of Lafitte's men kidnapped a Karankawa woman and the Native Americans retaliated. So this is where it gets dark. This put into motion the Battle of the Three Trees, where many of the Native Americans were murdered. They were essentially forced off the island afterwards. And then in 1821, one of Lafitte's captains is alleged to have raided a U.S. merchant vessel. And I believe this is the same year, actually. They just went on a spree. They raided a U.S. merchant vessel, and the Navy came back and forced Lafitte to leave the island. They were like, okay, thanks for what you did for us, but
You gotta go.
please leave. Get out. He did leave, but not before he burned down his entire compound, including the Maison Rouge. Some say that he left some of his treasure buried on Galveston.
And I believe it.
There are people who treasure
I
hunt.
fully believe it. I love to believe in
They have
fun
found
little funny things.
They have
like buried treasure.
they have found like doubloons on the island.
That is,
Yeah.
That's one of the coolest things you've told me.
That's
Yeah.
really
I
cool.
love that.
This is a very history heavy one. I mean,
And
there
I'm
are
having
there are some
fun.
ghosts, but this was just so interesting to me. I cut this down from like 34 pages of research to like 18 for y'all. So there's a lot to unpack here. So there was another home built on top of the foundations of Jean Lafitte's home, and though the home is no longer there, the foundation's still there, and there are claims of neighbors hearing men arguing at night when they look out their windows to men.
Oh man.
When they look out their windows to see what's going on, the streets are dark, nobody's around, and the voices stop.
Oh,
So-
that's creepy.
The lady claims she did this, and as soon as she walked back into her room, the arguing started again. So she went back to the window, and again, nothing. So she was just like, okay, and went to bed. Because what
What are
else
you gonna do?
There are also some claims of seeing strange light anomalies, like colored orbs floating through the ruins. They occur so frequently that nearby residents don't even notice them anymore. It's just another part of their daily lives, really. Another location that's said to be haunted by the fiendish pirates is Stewart's mansion and the surrounding land. The house was built in 1926 and sold to Marco Stewart in 1933. After his death, his widow and son sold the home in 1944 to the University of Texas Medical Branch, where they made it into a convalescent home for children.
That's eerie.
Today, you'll find the land is part of Galveston Island State Park with a historic marker indicating the location of Lafitte's Grove, where it's believed that Lafitte founded his pirate town and the site of the Battle of Three Trees against the Karankawa people. Caretakers of the building claim to hear the sounds of battle, cannons, muskets, sounds of cries and screams of like terror,
Oh my
really
God.
echoing through the trees. They see apparitions of Native Americans and pirates alike, as well as dark shadows that dart from tree to tree until they disappear into the house. Though these shadow people really are seen all throughout Galveston. There are also rumors of a pack of devil dogs roaming the land.
Ooh.
Lafitte is said to have demanded a voodoo priestess to perform a ritual on 12 black puppies as they were born to give them supernatural powers for hunting animals as well as men. They were to become his army of guard dogs to protect Maison Rouge. They were hellhounds with glowing red eyes and are still seen by some today.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I agree. I thought this was
I
one of the
love
coolest
that.
things. Just all the pirate stuff was the best. There are reports of disembodied barks and growls and even the smell of wet dogs on the property. And if you come across these devilish pups, it's said to be an omen of tragedy ahead.
Oh, I thought it was gonna be good luck.
So maybe not good. Here's an account by, I think this is one of the tour guides that hosts one of the tours around Galveston. Several years ago, someone told me they experienced a black female dressed in dirty clothing with a necklace of bones hanging around her throat while going through the courtyard of Stewart's mansion. He said all he could do was stand there and stare because at first he thought she was real because she was so clear. He realized she wasn't real the moment she reached down to draw something onto one of the tiles and then disappeared right in front of him. There was a railroad station, and it's not operational today, but they have a museum there now, which is another place we need to put on our list because I want to go. It's said to have a couple of people haunting its halls too. So there's a tale of an engineer who in 1900 named William Watson would stand outside doing handstands on the cattle guards and the engines. Yeah, he was just trying to
Okay.
entertain people. Okay, he was just out there. Maybe he had like a little hat for his money. I don't know. I don't know the whole story. But one day he did his handstand and unfortunately slipped and fell and was immediately decapitated by the cattle guard. His head was found about a quarter mile away with his hat still attached.
A quarter mile?
He wasn't making any money then, Macy.
I don't know. It just came off and rolled almost a quarter mile away. Employees of the museum today often blame Watson for all the objects that go missing and reappear in random places, as well as strange noises that they hear creeping through the museum when it's empty.
There's something especially eerie about a headless ghost. I don't know if it's less scary or if it's more.
All I can think of is nearly headless Nick.
I knew you were about to say that.
Yeah, me too. The whole time I was thinking of that too.
That's all I could see. Just to see that image in my head.
The Strand is also a historic district full of spooky hauntings and contains the oldest remaining commercial building on the island still today. The Henley Market and building were built before the Civil War and served as the offices for William and Joseph Henley. They were cotton and commission merchants. Being the tallest commercial building in town, it served as a watchtower during the Civil War to watch both the Gulf of Mexico and the Galveston Bay. And it was also one of the buildings that served as a makeshift morgue after the 1900 storm. There are many spirits seen around there.
Yeah.
So one is the Lady in White. She's described as an elusive spirit that typically stays in the back of the building, though some have also seen her frantically searching in the streets in front, just crying. She's always sad and upset. She wears a white dress or nightgown in like Victoria era style.
That's so sad.
But she's always upset, which is really sad. Then there's a little boy who is really the most active ghost in this area. He often appears wet and disheveled, wearing a gray winter suit and hat, and he plays through the building, running up and down the stairs from room to room, and he's seen all the time by residents and shopkeepers below.
Oh, that's so sad. But he's wearing winter clothes?
That's what it said, yeah.
He sounds like he drowned because he was all wet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you said like winter clothes, and that's what threw me off because I was like, oh yeah, like in the storm, but it was September.
I mean, there's still water in winter all through life,
yes,
and people can drown it.
But not hurricanes is what she's saying.
But not
Like
in
probably,
September.
maybe not the storm, but maybe another day of drowning.
Sad.
Like throughout much of Galveston, because of the many battles on land and sea, there's a Confederate soldier that is said to walk about the Henley building. He's often dressed in a gray uniform and is seen running up and down the stairs to and from the old lookout point.
Ooh, spooky.
He can also be seen when you come around corners. He just will be standing there in the doorway with his rifle in hand, like he's standing guard. And people see him through the windows at night, like when they're walking by the markets downstairs. They walk past and they can see him walking through like a white mist creeping through the building. The last one I want to talk about in this area is a little girl who's seen around Henley Market. She's about 4 or 5 years old. She is wearing a dark Victorian era dress with wet hair also. Ugh. She's most often heard and seen by other children. They describe to their parents of a little girl lost looking for her mom, and when the parents go to shopkeepers or go to look for her really, the girl is gone. They can't find her anywhere. People also claim to see her playing around on the second floor near the glass floors, and they hear her footsteps sometimes running across. But no one's around to be making those footsteps. So she's usually heard crying out for her parents, though.
Oh my gosh.
Kids like ghosts are the saddest and most scariest to me. Well, not really scary, but like just heartbreaking because they don't know, like, how do they finish their business here to be able to like cross over to whatever happens after, you know?
I also think, what if it's not a kid? What if it's pretending to be a kid?
Yeah,
but yes,
it's true.
It does make me sad anytime you say it was a kid.
Well, y'all are going to hate this next section.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, everyone. The most tragic story from Galveston's history has to be what happened at St. Mary's Orphanage during the Great Storm of 1900. The orphanage is said to have been around where the current Seawall Walmart is built. It was run by the Sisters of Charity. They arrived in Galveston in 1866 to care for the sick and infirm at the major port in Texas, and they were also tasked with taking care of the many orphans brought on in part by the yellow fever epidemic. The orphanage consisted of 2 large 2-story dormitories right off the beach, with balconies facing the Gulf. Behind it was a row of tall sand dunes supported by salt cedar trees. According to one of the surviving boys of the storm, the rising tides began eroding the sand dunes as though they were made of flour. When the water started to reach the dormitories, the nuns brought all of the children into the girls' dormitory because it was a newer and more sturdy building. They were singing Queen of the Waves in the first floor chapel to keep the children calm, but the water just continued to rise.
I'm about to cry.
Yeah, me too. I'm getting worked up. The children were moved up to the second floor, and they had a worker collect clothesline rope so that they could tie themselves to the children to keep them from getting separated. The children were all frightened, but the sisters remained calm and brave for the young boys and girls. At around 7:30 p.m., a tidal surge struck the south shore, and the children could hear the boys' dormitory crash and fall into the floodwaters. At this point, the 10 sisters tied around 6 to 8 young children to each other and wrapped one end of the rope around their own waists. And some of the older children began to climb up on the roof of the building because the water was rising and they wanted to see what was going on outside. Eventually, the girls' dormitory too lifted from its foundation and collapsed. Though the nuns attempted to save the children, all but 3 of the boys, that's 90 children and 10 nuns, drowned. The survivors, William Murney, Frank Madera, and Albert Campbell, miraculously hung onto the tree together, and after floating for more than a day, they were able to make it to town where they told the nuns running St. Mary's Hospital of the fate of their home and all who lived there. One of the boys remembered a sister tightly holding 2 small children in her arms, promising not to let go. The sisters were buried wherever they were found, with the children still attached to them. 2 of the sisters were found together across the bay on the mainland. One of them was tightly holding 2 small children in her arms. Even in death, she kept her promise not to let go.
Oh my God, Macy!
That's a quote.
Oh my God. That's so
an emotional episode.
Sad. Oh my God.
I warned everyone at the beginning, okay? I also read that the Sister of Charity of the Incarnate Word still sing Queen of the Waves every year on September 8th to honor the selfless nuns who did all they could to save the children.
That's beautiful.
Many children are seen all over Galveston Island today. We've talked about a few of them. Employees of the Seawall Walmart claim that they see and hear children often. Toys will move throughout the store. Sometimes even entire pallets of toys will seem to be misplaced, only to show up later where they were supposed to be. They hear the laughs and cries of children that sound like they're coming from the next aisle over, but they're never able to find them in the area. There are even some reports of nuns walking around the beach too.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I had to throw that one in the middle so that we could have a little before and after. On to the next thing. The Broadway Cemetery District is obviously haunted. It's a cemetery. And it feels silly to even introduce it because obviously cemetery. But it is important. It's the meeting of 7 burial grounds formed between 1839 and 1939 and covers 6 city blocks in Galveston.
Oh my God.
They host tours through the cemeteries. I don't know if y'all have seen that. And they detail the people who inhabit the graves and the ghosts that haunt the grounds. It seems really interesting. That's one of the ones on top of my list too.
See, I'm 50-50 on that one. About wanting to go.
Oh, I definitely do. If not, just to learn about the people who are buried there.
I want to, but I really feel like you shouldn't mess with it.
I want to go and see. Like, you're not messing with anything. You're just going and like walking in a cemetery. Like if you were visiting a grave, you're there.
Honestly, I wouldn't mind taking some silent time to work on the podcast in a cemetery by myself.
Oh my God.
During the day. But they're quiet. They're quiet and peaceful. So I've heard. I'm not one to just gallivant around cemeteries on the reg.
Okay. Sure.
But I wouldn't mind going and learning.
All right. I don't know. Me. There's something I just feel like it'd be weird to go and just be like gawking at their headstones like, oh, this was so-and-so and someone got a picture of them one time. I don't know. That makes me feel scared.
In my mind, it's different if you go and you're like, Spirit, come to me. Show me a sign. Why aren't you talking to me? Versus, wow, I'm admiring your headstone, young spirit.
I guess.
I think it's kind of like going and still showing respect. Like you're not going in there and doing anything wrong.
Yeah. I guess.
All about intention.
I guess. It still is a little eerie to me.
So some people who go probably have like bad experiences and it's because they have like bad intentions, but like we wouldn't.
I guess.
Yeah. True that. Many of the city's most famous residents were laid to rest here, and you can still find their graves today, which I, again, think would be interesting. The oldest of the cemeteries that came together is aptly named the Old City Cemetery.
Wow, that's so creative.
It was established in 1839 to replace the practice that the residents had before. Okay. That is the burying of their dead in sand dunes near the water that would inevitably erode, uncovering the deceased and moving their grave markers. So they're just like, oh, right by the sea. And then like 2 days later,
oh
like,
my God.
There's Grandma Terry.
Terry.
You said the name earlier. It is the burial ground for most of the casualties of the yellow fever epidemic and many of the victims of the Great Storm of 1900. One of the most interesting facts is because the city was raised a couple times, and the levels changed, some of the graves in the old city cemetery are 3 graves deep. So
Like they buried people on top?
Yeah, they just buried, and then the ground was raised, and they buried again, and the ground was raised, and they buried again.
What do they do with the headstones? They just leave them there?
I
Or
truly
they
don't
get rid
know.
of it and they just...
I don't know. Some of the headstones were probably lost.
See, that seems eerie to me.
It's creepy.
Mm-mm-mm.
One notable resident is a woman called the Demented Mother. Elise Romer Alberti killed 4 of her children with poisoned wine in 1894, and after a stint in the San Antonio Asylum, she returned to Galveston and killed herself.
Oh my God.
She is buried alongside her 4 children and is one of the only murderers buried alongside her victims.
I was about to say,
Really?
why did they bury her with the kids?
I mean,
I don't like that at all.
no.
At all.
She had a pretty hard life, and it was a sad life. After the death of 2 of her children and of her 15-year-old sister, and giving birth to her youngest child kind of all in the same year, some think she may have been suffering from some sort of postpartum psychosis.
Probably.
She's quoted as saying, "I could not fill my obligations to my babies. They are better off."
Oh, that's sad.
So she was really suffering.
definitely struggling.
People said that she was just off. People who knew her just knew that she wasn't acting like herself, and she was very paranoid and very
Okay. I take
not
that back.
of her mind.
Yeah, I take that back.
Either way,
do as
still
well.
horrible.
I take it back because
don't
I mean
take
it's
it back
horrible.
fully. Still terrible.
It's horrible, but knowing that she was struggling with something that is so hard and so
Yeah.
complex, and we still don't fully understand, and we're in 2023.
I mean,
They understand it, but like, when did they really start caring? You know what I mean? Especially back then, nobody
yeah, back then it definitely not.
lobotomy. It's like, oh, she's acting crazy, lobotomy. You know?
Well, they sent her to an insane asylum a little too late.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad.
Elise is one of many, many spirits purported to be seen walking between the graves at night. And there's a tour with a lady called the Lady in Black, who takes you walking through the cemeteries, telling the tales of the ones forgotten and all the encounters that people have with the paranormal there. She seems like a pretty cool person.
I would do that one. I would trust her.
She claims to be like friends with the spirits.
I believe it.
So the oldest house on the island is the Menard House, built by one of the founders of Galveston in 1838. There were reports of ghost children playing in the gardens and sightings of young women crying on a staircase. Supposedly, it's the daughter of Michelle Menard crying over a lover who betrayed her.
Aww.
There are some people who have stayed and claimed to hear disembodied laughter or the feeling of someone watching them while they sleep. And several years ago, the Galveston Historical Foundation put a hired musician up in the Menard House for the night because they hired him for an event. And he called them like 30 minutes later claiming that he felt spooked and wanted to sleep somewhere else. And here's a quote from somebody who has stayed there before. "We stayed there a few years ago for a staff retreat. In the middle of the night, we heard a loud thud. In the morning, a book that had been on the table where folks went to bed was found down the hallway on the floor, as if it were thrown across the room. That and footsteps on the staircase at night is what we experienced."
Would y'all stay there?
What book was it?
Ooh, the Bible.
I don't know. Maybe not.
My first thought was a Bible, and I was like,
Oh,
not staying
spooky,
there.
spooky.
Do not want to be there.
Would y'all stay there though, at a haunted place?
Maybe.
If it's like scary hauntings, no. If it's just like a friendly like spirit just roams around, like maybe.
I don't think I would
What
because
about
of
this one?
I don't think I would to any of them, just because I feel like I'd be fine awake, but sleeping, I know for a fact the way my dreams are, I know I would have a bad dream, and I
Yeah.
know I would have something scary happen to me, and I don't want to test it.
I don't think anything scary would happen to me.
No, I don't think so
Well,
either. You'd sleep like a rock.
Nothing ever happens that like scares me.
Yeah,
You don't get
We
scared.
know.
As we said in the beginning, she does not get scared.
she
She's
saw
just like,
a
oh, okay.
shadowy child figure running by her room and goes,
Good night.
Yep.
You're an
but I
interesting
would
creature.
be scared. I would be scared.
So Ashton Villa is one of the houses that we visited. Y'all probably remember. I think it's the first one on our tour. It has a really cool history, and some call it one of the most haunted houses in America. It was one of the first brick homes built in Texas by one of the richest men in the state. James Monroe Brown was super wealthy and owned a hardware store on the island. The family moved into the house on New Year's Eve in 1859 after it was built. It was one of the houses that was lifted after the 1900 storm, and the original fence is still on the property. It's just 3 feet of it's underground now. It's only about 3 feet tall. It's really cute.
It was so cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the picture will be on Instagram.
Yeah, we'll post all of our findings. The home and all of James Brown's fortune was given to his eldest daughter, Betty Brown, and this made her the richest woman in the U.S. and the 4th richest in the world at the time.
Love Betty. Loved everything we learned about her.
Queen. She was an eccentric character who was not your typical Southern belle. Though she was considered Texas's princess, she did not behave like one.
Nope.
She did whatever she wanted whenever she wanted. She would smoke cigars, drive her own horse and carriage, wear pants, gasp, and travel the world, often unaccompanied, where she would purchase many little treasures to bring back to her home in Texas. Though Betty had a great deal of men asking her hand in marriage, she remained a lifelong bachelorette. She didn't seem to have any interest in the men in her life, though she did very much enjoy painting, particularly nude portraits of women that are now hanging throughout the home. She is a spirit that's been seen many times over the years.
See, Betty is who I would want to see. If I was going to see a spirit, I want to see Betty.
I agree.
We're rocking with Betty.
We love Betty. Tilly Brown, Betty's younger sister, had a little bit of trouble in her life, though. At 19, she married a man named Thomas Sweeney and then moved into a home her father had built for her as a marriage present a few blocks away.
Gorgeous home,
Beautiful
by the
home.
way.
Like most of the homes there that are still standing. Though her home was nice, Thomas was not. He was a horrible drunk. He often abused her and the children.
Boo! Boo! Tomato.
The abuse was so terrible and just so blatant out in the open that after Betty and Tilly's parents died, Betty had Tilly and her children move back into her house with her and gathered affidavits from people all over town and some of the people that worked for them in their house, and were able to acquire a restraining order against Thomas. She was able to divorce him, keep the house, and keep the children.
Which is unheard of. Divorce in general was just unheard of. Women, you don't get to divorce your husband. Like,
there were divorces, but if you divorced your husband, you were not getting the kids. You were not getting any property. Yeah. All property that you owned, that your family owned, whatever, went to your husband immediately on marriage. And after you divorced, gone. You just had nothing. But she did not. She kept everything. And he was forced by Betty to get off the island. He was not allowed on the island anymore. He was gone. 10 years after their divorce, though, Thomas Sweeney was found dead in the Tremont Hotel in Galveston.
Aww.
The rumor is that Betty and Tilly heard that Thomas was hanging around the brothels and casinos on the island. He was found dead in the hotel, and the coroner ruled it a death by natural causes. But some say that because the Brown sisters' immense wealth and possible ties to the mob, that he was murdered at the request of Betty and Tilly.
Oh no, so sad.
Again, Betty is our queen.
We love Betty.
We love Betty. The home remained in the Brown family until 1926 when it was sold and used as a Masonic meeting hall. Weird.
Okay.
And in 1960, the home was given to the Galveston Historic Society for repairs and was opened for guided tours, though it's no longer open for tours anymore. It's now an event venue, and people have weddings there. During the renovations, a caretaker lived on the grounds to oversee the home, and one night he heard the piano being played. So he got up fearing someone had broken in and ran downstairs and into the room and saw a Victorian-era woman sitting playing a song. And as soon as he saw her, she disappeared and the music stopped playing. Some believe that it could have been Tilly, though, because Betty didn't play instruments, but Tilly could play the piano and the violin.
Oh, wow.
The caretaker was later quoted as saying that he turned on every light in the house and remained awake for the rest of the night.
Me.
There are sightings of Civil War soldiers on the grounds, just like everywhere else, really. Walking inside and outside of the house, there was a chest that belonged to Betty, whose key went missing decades ago, that would lock and unlock throughout the day. And her bed would have to be remade several times throughout the day, as if someone had laid down in it and mussed up the sheets. You can still hear sounds of a party at night, and one of the tour guides has even seen Betty dressed in an extravagant turquoise gown at the top landing of the stairs.
Oh my gosh.
Our tour guide actually showed us a really cool picture of someone had taken on a previous tour, and you can see it's at night and it's in the yard. So the yard is blocked off still by the 3-foot tall fence, and nobody's in there. And you can see in the corner, someone's walking off in the distance, a full face. And if you look at pictures of Betty and you look at this picture, it looks just like her.
So cool. It was so cool to see.
The house on Avenue L and 24th Street where Tilly and Thomas lived together is also still there, as we talked about. It's said that Thomas may still haunt its halls, though. The current owners of the home claim to hear footsteps, and even once during a dinner party they had with another couple, an intense rage washed over all of the guests for a moment, for no reason at all. They all just got really outraged and really mad for like 30 seconds to a minute, and then it passed away, and then they all just kind of felt uncomfortable afterwards.
Oh, that's unsettling.
Yeah. Lucy Testa, who was a former manager at the Ashton Villa, states that on February 18th of 1991, the mansion's alarm went off without cause. Later that same day, as she closed the mansion, she noticed the ceiling fan was on at the top of the stairs. She turned it off, but the next morning, she found the fan on again. She later discovered this date, February 18th, was Miss Betty's birthday.
Oh.
So she's bopping about, celebrating, having a good time. The Hotel Galvez is probably one of the most haunted hotels in Texas and one of the most haunted places in Galveston.
Is it still open?
It is still open.
Ooh, I want to go.
It was built in 1911.
I lied. I want to go.
Okay. It was built in 1911 over what used to be the Beach Hotel, Electric Pavilion, and the Pagoda Bathhouse. So it's a big area. It is a massive place that has changed hands a few times, but it still stands strong right off the seawall. It's that big hotel when you drive down the seawall.
Yeah.
It's really pretty. It was commandeered by the U.S. Coast Guard during World War II, and tourists were barred from renting any rooms as they were being used for barracks for a while, but it resumed public patronage by the early 1950s. There's a bathroom downstairs that is said to be haunted by a crying woman during weddings and galas and other large events. Women will go into this bathroom and hear someone crying in a stall, and she won't answer. So they go up to the concierge desk and they're like, hey, someone's crying in there. You might want to go check it out. They go in and no one's there.
Oh.
Some people even report shaking stall doors, toilets flushing on their own, and sinks turning on. And I watched a YouTube video on a channel called Strange Town where they visited the Galvez, and one of the guys felt a pinch on the back of his neck. He sat down and like immediately was like, if you're here, we want to talk to you, and just like felt this like pinch on the back of his neck. He jumped up and like ran out of the bathroom and came back. He's like, sorry, you scared me. Some guests will hear children laughing and playing in the halls, and there's one young girl who's seen quite often. She can be seen bouncing a ball while wearing 19th century clothing, and she's usually in places that she's not supposed to be. So like there was a construction crew there who didn't know about the hauntings and came up and was like, there's this little girl. She's in an unsafe environment, and she was just gone. Nowhere to be found. Like, I guess she's not there anymore.
That's kind of cute.
Guests claim to see candles blow out on their own with no wind, TVs turning on and off, dishes breaking in their room, and hear breathing late at night when they're all alone. A housekeeper once reported a strange light emitting from a vacant room, and the most haunted room in the hotel, maybe 501. There was a young girl named Audra in the 1950s who was engaged to be married. He was a mariner, and he would often set sail off the coast of Galveston, and she would stay in the Hotel Galvez in the same room, 501, waiting for his return. One day she was told that her fiance's ship had capsized, and there didn't seem to be any survivors. She refused to believe it and continued waiting for him to come home. After several days passed beyond when he was supposed to return, she walked up to the west turret and hanged herself from the just immense grief.
At the hotel?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so sad.
Unfortunately, a few days after her death, her fiance did return.
No!
I was just about to say, what? She killed herself and he returns.
Yeah.
Many guests and staff see the lovelorn lady roaming through the halls and have particularly intense experiences in the room she's often said to have stayed in. They report electronics mysteriously no longer working, key cards always malfunction, lights flicker on and off. And if we ever stay, we have to stay in that room. Maybe. Here are a few accounts of people stays in this hotel. A friend of mine and I stayed on the 5th floor in August of 2011 next to room 503. So maybe they were in 501 or 505, I'm not sure. There was a door between us in that room. Around 2 a.m., we heard loud noises that like someone was throwing luggage against the walls for about 5 minutes. We asked the front desk who was staying in that room, and they said no one.
Spooky.
Here's another. Just stayed here on November 1st, 2014. I stayed in room 528. I was not sure if I had a visitor or not, as my roommate said she was awake most of the night. However, twice during the night, my bed shook, and both times I smelled like flowers. I asked my friend if she had sprayed any room spray during the night, and she said she hadn't. The next morning, I looked around to see if there might be some sort of plug-in that I'd smelled, and there were none. All I can say is the only time my bed has ever shaken is during an earthquake, and there were no reports of one on the island that night.
Oh my goodness. Someone asked us on YouTube if we've ever felt our bed shake.
I did. I saw that.
What a little
I
coinky
have
dink.
not, and I don't want to.
Nope, me neither.
And the final one that I have written down here. We just stayed the night in room 518 and had the scariest experience of our lives. I always leave the bathroom light on and the door cracked about 6 to 8 inches for the kids to have a nightlight. At 12:10 a.m., I noticed that the light just went out. I got up to turn it back on and noticed the door opened up wider, yet no one had used it. I reached in and turned on the light and immediately a woman started crying really loudly. Chills of cold went over my body as I looked over at the bed at my son, who was devastated by the sound. The sound then moved outside of our room door and continued for about 30 seconds and started to fade down the hall as I opened the door quickly and saw no one.
I just got chills.
Me too. My wife woke up and asked what's the commotion about, and I looked at my 11-year-old son and asked what he heard, and he replied a woman screaming really loud in the bathroom. I then said that was exactly what I heard as it moved past me and outside the door. I reported it to the front desk and security came up and it seemed to be no surprise to them. When we then decided to stay at Quality Inn farther down the seawall. I never believed in paranormal activity until this. Now I absolutely cannot deny it.
Oh, I don't know why that gave me such bad chills.
Yeah, that got me too.
That's really scary. It's always scarier when there's like multiple people to witness something happening.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime it's someone screaming
or crying
is what scares me.
Yeah, me too. So there are a few other haunted hotels and haunted houses all throughout the island that are really worth looking into if you ever get the chance to.
If we stay at the place, we might do a Galveston part 2 because there's so much. We're having to cut down, but there's so much.
Mm-hmm. The last one I want to talk about is the scariest. It's the Normandy Inn. It's currently not open, but it's in the works to being open or reopened, really.
Nope.
And I saved it. This is the creepiest, so I saved it for last. Even our tour guide and others that I've seen talking about this house online say that they do their best to avoid the home and try not to touch it. It's known to locals as the portal to hell. The land was empty before the house was built, no existing structure on it before, but it does lie over the boneyard where that mass grave is. There are also rumors that something may have caused a portal to hell to open up on that property. The house was built in 1912 by a man from Houston named George C. Smith. It was 7,800 square feet and intended to be a nice boarding house. On the day it opened, the family threw a giant party to celebrate. The man and his wife had a 6-year-old son named George Jr., who had apparently been misbehaving ever since they moved into the house. On that night, the son jumped from the upstairs window out into the yard where they were having the gathering. Though he was severely injured, he survived, and when asked why he jumped, the little boy told his dad they wanted to kill everyone in the house, and instead of complying with the spirits, he just jumped instead.
It's so dark.
There was tons of paranormal activity, and it all came to a head when George's wife attempted to kill him with a kitchen knife. The family packed up and moved back to Houston immediately after. They got a divorce. And the home still became a boarding house. They just didn't live there anymore. It was a boarding home between 1912 and 2009, I believe, and it seemed to change owners every few years. No one could keep it. They told us on the tour that between the years of 2007 and 2009, 11 tenants vanished without a trace while staying at that home.
Which is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Insane. Just no leads, no idea where they went, gone.
Adds
so
to the
eerie.
mystery. Yeah. It became a hotspot for satanic worship after it closed down. And in 2013, a foul odor was emitting from the home, and the city police went in to inspect. Inside, they found over 200 small animals that seemed to have been ritually sacrificed and a small human body wrapped in barbed wire.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, our tour guide told us a rumor that many people in Galveston believe could be the source of all the negative energy. Another wealthy man from Galveston named Waters Davis owned another home on the other side of the block. We actually saw that house. Beautiful, also haunted.
Oh, yeah.
Like everything else. And he kind of had a little bit of mummy fever, like many of the people did back then.
Crazy for you to even say.
Yeah. Rich people would go to Egypt and buy mummies.
Sick.
They would take them back home and have unwrapping parties. Some of them, our tour guide said, some of them would like grind up the mummies
and smoke
put them. No.
Yes.
They would drink it. They would grind up the mummies and put it in their whiskey. And
I thought she said
mummy.
They smoked them too.
No, that would be horrible.
I would believe they're drinking it.
I guess so.
It's all horrible.
They're
That's
drinking
true.
it.
That's
Why
true.
wouldn't they smoke it?
I don't know. Feels a lot bad for the lungs. don't know, but either way, cannibalism and weird. Why?
Sick.
So-
Rich people are freaks.
Weird.
They've always been. They've now
bored.
and forever.
Well, regardless, Waters Davis brought home a mummy, and it didn't account for Egypt is dry and Galveston is not. It's very humid. The mummy began to mold and rot, and the wife was, please get this out of my house.
Yep.
Please get this out of my house. So it's rumored that he buried it somewhere on the island, and they have done several searches around the property for it. But there's one place that I don't think they've checked, and it's underneath the Normandy Inn. It's not too far from his home, but just far enough to kind of be away from where people would have been. And that could have been like the source of this portal to hell being opened.
Which
I believe it.
makes the most sense to me, because you went to someone's country, took them
From their
brought them
burial
there.
ground, like they were buried there specifically.
Yeah.
Brought it to his house and had it like on display for people to just like gawk at.
Yeah.
Which is sick.
Weird.
And hey, if I was the mummy, I'm doing that too. I'm causing havoc too. I would.
You are going to be just a hellion in the afterlife.
Only if I die tragically. If I go at like
Or
95.
if the bones are stolen. Or if you've got a long list of ifs.
So treat me right. In life and death, treat me right. That's all I'm saying.
Will do. So today the house is being renovated by a couple that has a TV show where they renovate historic homes in Galveston, and they're calling it the Mansard House, getting away from the bad name of Normandy Inn, and they're planning to turn it into a boutique hotel.
This is a place I would not stay
Nope.
at all.
No.
No,
I
I'm
wouldn't
gonna
even
pass.
visit it.
You can go if you want. It'll probably be open eventually.
Let us know
soon.
if you do.
Tell us your stories.
We want to know.
But
But
you won't catch me there.
It's supposed to be really cute. It's gonna be
No.
really cute, but
Mm-mm.
still demonic. The scariest part on our tour, and we will post this. I'm gonna try and put it in the video. There is a live photo that somebody had taken while on a tour late at night, and you can see there's nobody. She said that there was nobody near the house. They were all back on the sidewalk, looking at the house, taking pictures, and you can see in the photo a small child, looks like a little girl or a little boy, standing looking at the house, and behind it there is this dark shadowy figure crouched over. It is a live photo, and when you play the live photo, you can see the dark arched figure standing up as they like pan over to the next thing.
It was sick. I hope you can put it in this video.
I will,
Because you
give
can't
it my
post the
all.
live on Instagram, can you? Unless you like screen record it.
Yeah, it makes me sick to my stomach
Mhm.
to see it. It is so terrifying.
It just feels dark. Just even if you don't believe in stuff, because I like to be skeptical. Like if you're being shown something, if you're being sold something, like, oh, we're on a paid tour. Of course they want to show us something scary. Something about that live, just like, it got me. It got me good.
Yeah. It even still, I was looking at it earlier today.
I haven't looked at it since.
Okay. Yeah. But we're going to end on there. This was, like I said, a semi-condensed version of Galveston. There's just so much history and so much ghost activity. So many stories. So many reviews of people leaving their experiences online. It was almost impossible. You could do a whole podcast just on Galveston.
I think we're probably going to do a part 2 because we'll go back and we'll talk about things. If we stay at a hotel,
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have something to talk about.
Let us know if you want to hear more. Let us know because we would love to talk more about this.
Yeah, for sure.
But I highly recommend if you ever get the chance to visit. It's super fun, super exciting stuff, super cool stuff. And it's really cute too, just in the daytime. There's a lot of cute things to do. But that's all I've got for y'all today.
Yeah, and I would just like to make a little thank you to everybody because we posted everything. We recorded a bunch of videos in advance, so all the critiques.
Because we were scared.
Yeah, we were scared, and we wanted to have some stuff like in the vault. All the critiques and nice things people have said, we've like implemented them, and so thank you for watching. You guys have been so nice.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's made it so much more fun and so validating that like we've been having fun doing this, so like we were gonna do it regardless, but knowing that people are enjoying it is like,
Now I know we're actually talking to people and not just this light and camera in front of us.
Yeah, because the first few videos are shaky, but like we're learning and we're getting better and we're taking everything you guys are giving us and we're having so much fun. So thank you for being here.
Yeah. Anything to say, Kayla?
I've enjoyed watching and listening, and I've enjoyed being here too. This is fun.
Yeah, thank you, Ferb.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. It's really fun to have you here. But we appreciate you taking the time to listen today. And don't forget to rate and review us if you're listening on podcasts. And like, comment, subscribe on YouTube if you're listening there. Let us know if you've ever been to Galveston. Also, let us know if there's anything that you want us to talk about. We would love to take suggestions. We're open to basically anything. We have a lot planned, but we'd love to take your suggestions too. So let us know down in the comments. And share this video if you feel compelled to do so. If you have any creepy encounters or stories of your own that you'd like to tell us, please do. We want to hear them.
Yes, please. We've been getting a few, and it's so scary, and so again, like, validating that there are people out there that are like, oh my gosh, I did have this, because like, kind of feel like we're freaks.
We feel less we feel less crazy.
Yeah, because
if you share with us.
It felt kind of crazy, but then we're getting people we don't even know on like YouTube comments and like Instagram and stuff, like giving us their stories, and it just feels, it's so cool. It feels like a little sense of community, and I'm loving it.
So if you want to send us any of your stories, you can DM us on Instagram at GhosteasPod, or you can email us. That's our preferred method, really. It's easier to keep track of. That's ghosteaspod@gmail.com. Maybe you can hear your story in a future episode, or not. We just want to know.
Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things, or Natalie will haunt you when she dies.
But thanks so much for going on this adventure with us, and we'll see you next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.